Hey everyone, this is going to be a special episode today, but I hope it's not going to be special in that I hope that this gratitude will continue to be expressed in my videos, and I hope that it'll kind of set off a chain reaction and that you'll feel encouraged to do the same. And that is showing gratitude towards healthcare providers. And the reason that I want to do this is to first of all encourage healthcare providers. I know that as patients it can be really challenging and really difficult, especially when you're dealing with chronic illness. And a lot of people, including myself, have had negative experiences within the healthcare realm. And this is not at all to invalidate or dismiss those. I just want to take a moment because I know that it's become a popular thing to kind of vent about negative experiences, and I want to kind of go on the record and express gratitude and encourage healthcare providers because they do so much. And this is a little biased. If you don't know, if you haven't seen the intro to this channel, a little background on me is that I was raised in a home where one of my parents was in the healthcare field, and my mom, and she really inspired me in a lot of ways to go into medicine when I was young. And for a long time I wanted to go into medicine, and dealt with some doubts about that as far as being able to handle it, and also just being able to handle maybe 12-hour shifts, and if I wanted a family, how was I going to balance that? And I eventually went on to get beginners training and to become a paramedic, and that didn't work out. My health kind of went south while I was doing that, and in a way, I'm kind of grateful because I think that I would have been in a lot of trouble physically, mentally, and emotionally if I had become a paramedic, given what I know now about my body and its condition. But I want to highlight how my mom really encouraged and inspired me. And as somebody working in the healthcare field, my mom was an RN for over 20 years, and for many of those years she worked on an ESE wing in the public healthcare system. And I don't think they're called ESE wings anymore. They're called, well, actually I don't know what they're called, but basically helping mentally and physically challenged kids. So a lot of these kids had, like conditions where their muscles were affected. They were in wheelchairs, things like spina bifida, behavioral issues, all that kind of stuff. And so she was a nurse on that wing, and so I got to be exposed to that, whether it was after school or during kind of summer programming. I think it was summer programming. It's hard for me to remember, but I was in that atmosphere, especially when I attended that school where she worked. And so that really inspired me, seeing the care that she had for them, and just kind of getting a glimpse into that world and having an understanding that, wow, like people can really go through a lot, and people really have a varied experience as far as their abilities physically and mentally, and they have different needs. And I'm incredibly grateful for that experience now, because I think it's helped me, and it's helped me in a way I think that not everybody gets to see that. And my mom has always been such an encourager to me, and so when I started showing interest in medicine, she really encouraged me. I ended up going into a medical magnet program in middle school, and whenever I had things that I was sharing from school, I remember she would always chime in with her perspective, and I always learned so much from her. And I still do. And she continues to inspire me. And she's not in the field anymore. She's retired, but I'm grateful to her as somebody who worked in the healthcare industry. And I think that seeing her, as a kid when she would be coming home and hearing her stories about the different challenges that she faced gave me a certain level of respect for people in the healthcare field, because it's not easy. It's really not easy. And going through my own experience in starting to get the education that I needed for something in that field, and understanding that if I got into that field that I might be working 12-hour shifts, and how would I balance my relationships and my responsibilities. And once I hit my major health issues, then it was kind of like, well, what do I do? Like, how can I work with this? And so I know I've heard stories of other physicians facing those same kind of human issues, and I think it's a real challenge. And I've even heard some of my own doctors like going through migraines. I think it's opened my eyes to see that doctors have their own health conditions that they're dealing with too. And anyways, I just think it's so important to encourage them. Doctors have a really high suicide rate, and I don't know all of the factors into that. I could guess at a few, but I don't want this particular episode to be about that. I want it to be about encouragement and shining a light on the things that have been really beautiful and that have helped me as a patient in the situations that I've been in. And so I want to start, I'm going to kind of go in like maybe chronological order, I think is the best way I can think to do this. But I remember like when I first was dealing with my health issues, the first kind of primary care physician that I saw, she didn't really know what was going on, and she was new to the field. She had been recently graduated from medical school, and she said that, and I think that was just really helpful from my perspective, because it gave me perspective on her, and it also set my expectations for the appointment and maybe made me aware of the limitations that she might have. And I really appreciated her honesty, and even though she didn't have the answers, she was willing to order testing that might be helpful and point me in the right direction. And she, hearing certain symptoms was like, okay, like we still don't know what's going on, but I think this would be a good next step based on your symptoms. And I think she was actually the one who recommended that I go to the eye doctor, and thank God, because I ended up having a kind of urgent issue with having a retinal hole in my eye that needed pretty immediate correction. So I'm really glad that she did. And so that was a great experience. And just also as a side note in this video, I'm not going to be saying names as much as I would like to, just for personal privacy reasons. But I hope that if this video happens to come across anybody that has helped me, and maybe I fail to recognize how you've helped me, please forgive me. And I hope you know that you have. And I hope that if I do comment on it, that you are encouraged and blessed by what I'm sharing here. So another fantastic woman that really helped me along my way, and I saw her numerous times. She's probably the person that I have seen the most in neurology, and I don't currently see her, but I saw her very often at the beginning of my journey. And she is actually, I believe, a nurse practitioner, but she's done, I think, master's level work in neurology. And the thing that I thought was wonderful about her was that she always had this sense of like fascination and like curiosity about what was happening. And she always had this like learning attitude. And I love that. That really resonates with me. Like, I feel like I'm constantly learning. And she was slow to draw conclusions. And I really loved that because I know, like, as much as I have tried to find answers and to find a diagnosis that can help with treatment, I don't want to get a misdiagnosis. And so as a patient, that's really reassuring to me when a provider isn't too quick to make a diagnosis. And she was the first to suggest that maybe I was having migraines, and I later found out that I was. And she introduced me to other ideas, like to central sensitization. She would draw out pictures for me and diagrams to help me understand, which I thought was fantastic. I'm a very visual learner, so that was really helpful. But most of all, I just really appreciated her attitude, and I could always come to her with questions, which I did. Like, I had so many questions, and I would follow up with her in our patient portal, and she was always responsive and just very kind about the whole journey. And so I felt really blessed to have her. And she was so humble, and she was like, sometimes I'm not the one who has the answers, and I found that my role is just to get the person to their next step. And I think that's kind of partly like what's inspired me in these videos, is like, I'm not gonna have the answers for you guys. I wish that I could, but a lot of the times maybe it's just gonna be the next step, or maybe encouragement or hope along your path. And I hope you do find the answers that you need. But I think that her attitude was so fantastic that she had a reasonable expectation of herself, that she might not know the answer. So I thought that was really, really great and really helpful. There was another primary care physician that I had at the beginning, who actually was the one to diagnose me with POTS, and which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And she was the one who ordered the tilt table test for me. And that's what confirmed the POTS diagnosis. And I had no idea what POTS was. Like, I was already convinced that I had multiple sclerosis. And she was very young, and I had kind of, concerns about that. But she, right off the bat, was she had a direction to go in. And I really admired that. And that's not to say that I wouldn't appreciate if she needed time, but she was just so like precise with that direction, and she took in like my symptoms and everything, which was, I can only imagine, very overwhelming. I mean, like, forming a list of symptoms for me is very overwhelming because there are so many. I can only imagine like seeing this giant long list for the first time when you're first meeting someone is a little much, but she took it in stride and got me somewhere that I needed to go. So that was pretty amazing. And let me think. There was a time when I went to the emergency room, and this was during COVID times, and I actually needed to be tested for COVID. And a little backstory that's relevant to this: the first time that I was tested for COVID, I got a bloody nose because they went a little too deep with the thing that they put up your nose, and I just I was a little skittish about COVID tests after that, understandably. And so she was a nurse, this woman that I'm talking about, and I was, being upfront with her. I'm like, I have a little PTSD and from COVID testing, and she was great. She was like so like great. Like, I felt like a little kid, like being nervous and everything, but she was fantastic. And afterward, I said to her, she's like, I just want you to know, like, I've had COVID testing where I got a bloody nose after, and I've had COVID test PTSD since. And so thank you for doing that the way that you did. And she responded and she was like, oh my God, she was like, if somebody had given me a bloody nose, I'm gonna give you a bloody nose. And she just like literally did the handshaking and everything. And like the fact that she showed concern and like shock and injected humor into the moment, I really appreciate it as a human. Like, it just was like this beautiful reminder that like no, people should not have to experience that kind of thing, and that's horrifying. It was just very validating and reassuring and kind of lifted my spirit in a kind of tense moment. So I really appreciated that. There is a neurologist that was another neurologist. I have a lot of neurology providers that have helped me along the way. And this neurology provider, like I said, I was convinced that I had multiple sclerosis. And so I had asked my primary care physician if she could refer me to someone that specializes in multiple sclerosis, which she did. Excuse me. Interestingly, he also specialized in migraines, and so I ended up getting my migraine diagnosis for him. And this gentleman is very, very personable and very direct at the same time. I don't know how to like describe that differently, but like it's kind of hard to explain. Like, so I came in and I've learned that sometimes it's good to be upfront. Sorry, there is a gnat still. It's to be upfront about what I'm thinking, what I have in mind, my concerns, to the healthcare provider so that they can either validate, address, or challenge my thoughts. And that ends up relieving a lot of anxiety on my end. So, usually. And so I told this guy, like, so I've had these symptoms, these neurological symptoms. I know that the MRI is not showing any lesions, but I've read in, medical journals, and I've seen like in YouTube videos and stuff that people can have MS but not have the lesions on their brain. And I have never had a spinal MRI. And so I'm concerned that I might have lesions on the spine and not in the brain, and we might be missing it. And he took that in and was, did the physical exam and everything, which by the way is awesome because doctors don't always do the physical exam these days, it seems. Like, that's been my experience at least. And that's kind of concerning, which it's understandable because I think there's been a lot of sexual assault allegations that doctors have concerns about now. So it's understandable, but from a patient's perspective, when you're genuinely concerned about your symptoms and you're not concerned about a sexual assault in the moment, it's very helpful and assuring when they do the physical exam. But what he addressed my concern by saying, yes, I know that it's in the literature, but I'm concerned about misdiagnosis. And he said that he had worked with a physician who specialized in multiple sclerosis for, I can't remember how many years. He said a lot of years. And they had never come across an MS patient that didn't have lesions. And I can't remember if that was specifically brain lesions or lesions in general. But I thought that was reassuring. And the fact that he addressed the concern about misdiagnosis was also reassuring to me as a patient. So that was great. He also was just so sweet. I had to take my shoes off, I think, for one of the neurological exams, with your feet. And he helped me with my socks back on, and I didn't feel like he was treating me like a child. It just felt like he was serving me, and that was really incredible. And another example with the same doctor was that I had been explaining the symptoms about when I was having chest pain and pins and needles in my arm, and how the pins and needles would kind of like feel residual for a long time after that. And he just responded with, "Oh, wow." And just him having that response of, "Oh, wow," was comforting to me, because it registered that, okay, he's really hearing me and he's really understanding my concern here, and he's concerned too. And I think, like, in my experience, I've heard a lot of doctors say, and I know I'm using it a lot here for my own self, for my own voice, in saying I felt reassured. But I've heard doctors say to me, it's very reassuring, like when tests come back normal, or imaging comes back normal, they'll say, this is very reassuring. But for me as the patient, that's very concerning when they say that, because I'm having all these symptoms, but we're still not having an answer. And especially when my symptoms were progressing, I was getting worse and worse, especially with the migraines. It just felt like I wasn't being heard, and that we weren't going in the right direction. It felt like something was off, like that we needed to tweak things. And so it felt affirming and validating to me to hear and see, like, in person, a doctor be concerned. And I think that, when doctors do say that's very reassuring, that their intent really is to reassure patients. And that's not to diminish that intent at all. I'm just speaking from the way that impacted me and what has and hasn't worked. And so for all of the doctors that have expressed concern, thank you, because that actually has brought my anxiety down. And so I've had really great experiences with that physician. His physician's assistant was also phenomenal. He was constantly trying to help me when I was having like complex tics going on and thought that I might be having seizures. They were so great at getting me referrals to other specialists, to suggesting medications that might work, to taking me off medications when they didn't work. They were just very responsive and helpful. And so I know, like, for a lot of patients, myself included, like, trying out different medications can be really scary. Like, you don't know how it's going to affect you. On the flip side of that, I have seen and experienced where it can be difficult for doctors to get doctors to order tests or to try different medications. And I found that can be really frustrating. And I think it's good that tension is there, because you don't want to be taking a medication that isn't for what you truly have, because that can actually hurt you. But something I really admired about this particular team was that they were willing to try the medications, and if they didn't work, then we moved on, but they were willing to try them. And it was based on the symptoms that I was having. So that was a great experience with them. Another great experience, and this was from a referral from that physician. I went to go see an ear, nose, throat doctor, and this is when I was concerned about having a cerebrospinal fluid leak. And shortly after finding that my family, like, I had family members that were potentially being affected by Ehlers-Danlos, I went to this ear, nose, throat doctor to see if, because I get this, like, feeling of fluid, and it's not just a feeling, like, I will get actual fluid in my ears. It's like a very thin layer of fluid, and I have very waxy ears, and so I don't know, like, I didn't know if that was part of that, or like if it was potentially CSF liquid flowing out of my ears. Not that I had flowing liquids, but you get the drift. It felt like there was like a small creak in my ear, and because I was getting these migraines, I was concerned. And so I went to this ear, nose, throat doctor, and I go pretty much to every doctor's appointment with my packet of papers of like my symptoms, the medications that I'm on, like the questions that I have. So I had all of that, and it's really helpful for me because I need a roadmap sometimes. And that's what I told her, and she was like, oh, by all means, like, I totally understand. And so she like not only encouraged me to have like the papers there to help me like communicate what was going on, but when I had brought, and this is like a tip also, if you are looking to get a referral from a physician and you know that going into the appointment, something that can be really helpful for doctors is if you have a specific specialist in mind, and you explain your rationale for wanting to see that physician, if you have their information, a lot of times that can make it a lot easier for them when they're placing that order for the referral for you, to have that information on hand, because then they have the doctor's name spelled out, they have like which hospital they're at, they have all that information. And so this was when I actually got referred to my current neurologist, and she's been phenomenal. And she specializes in CSF leaks. And so I had that information to give to her. And the thing that I loved about this provider was that she literally, as we left the what do you call that? The room, the examination room, there we go. As soon as we left the examination room, she was saying to her staff at the front office, we need to get a referral for Mrs., I think at that time I was still Mrs. Blyer. She's concerned about a CSF leak. We need to get this referral to her for this doctor at this location. And so like I could see that they were taking the initiative, that it was being addressed, and that it was being addressed in that moment. And so that was amazing to me, because at that point I had gone through so many doctors already, and we didn't know what was going on, apart from the migraines, that it was just such a relief to hear the concern, to see that it was getting addressed, and to not have to fight so hard to get to the next step. You know what I'm saying? So that was phenomenal. I've actually had fantastic doctors when it comes to giving referrals, and I'm really grateful for that, because I think so much of what I've gone through in my own journey has been like more on the rare side, not completely rare, but rare enough that general doctors might not know about it or understand what's happening. And so I've been really appreciative of that. Let me think. I've had so many other great experiences. My current neurologist is phenomenal. She is so human. Every time I come for an appointment, she says, hello, friend. And like, even when she's wearing a mask, I can tell she's smiling, and she explains things. Like, she will show me the MRIs and point out like the specific things that she sees and describe them and describe what she's thinking. And I'm one of those people that I like to know that information. If you don't, then that's okay too. But I like to understand what's happening and the rationale behind things, because I think for me as a patient, that puts me in the best possible position to advocate for myself. And so she's phenomenal at explaining things. She prescribed medication that has brought me down a full migraine disability class. And I'll tell you about those medications perhaps in another video. And she brings this kind of like human touch to just the patient experience. I had asked for a referral for a out-of-state doctor that's very far away. I'm in Florida, and this physician was in New York. And she knew of the reputation of this hospital where he worked and was just raving and reassuring me that this is a great hospital. Like, she even went so far as to say, like, if I hadn't, gone in the direction I had, like, that was my choice in certain situations. And so that for me as a patient was really helpful and comforting to hear from another physician that they had so much confidence in this particular hospital and their opinion. And she even was like, when you go there, you need to try Wegmans. Somebody will correct me on that. But I guess it's a grocery store. And I have heard about this place. And she's like, when you go there, you need to go there. And so then I not only had this doctor's appointment that, I was kind of looking forward to, a little anxious about, but I had a fun food thing to look forward to, so I thought that was really great because my husband and I were making, a vacation out of it too. We ended up not going through with that. We found somebody closer in Florida and found out that physician was actually retiring. So we decided to move things closer to home, which is totally fine. But I will still try Wegmans at some point when I get the chance. But I just thought that was the coolest thing. And she even had a resident there who had lived very close to that area. And they're like, oh yeah, you got to try the cheese bread. And another resident who had come into one of her appointments, after I had found out that I had Ehlers-Danlos, she herself was like, yeah, me too. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. So it's amazing to me, when healthcare providers are willing to just let down their guard and be open and be open to even to experiencing joy themselves, in the hospital, in the patient encounters, And so that's what I really enjoy about those. I had thought about another one while I was talking. Let me see if I can remember it. Oh, okay, here's one. This is not the one that I was trying to think of, but it is a great one. On the note of joy, when doctors have been willing to laugh with me in appointments, that has made a world of difference. And I'll make this a 2 for 2 special because I hope that doesn't mean something dirty. Forgive me if it does. Sometimes I'm a little oblivious to those things, so forgive me. But anyways, I will try to make 2 compliments out of this one story, and that is that I at one point was having a workup for fibromyalgia, and that nurse who was taking down my notes about all of my symptoms was the most in-depth, thorough, fantastic questions I have ever experienced in a appointment, period. The questions were so detailed, okay, you experience pain in your neck. Can you describe the type of pain? How long has it been happening? And is it more like this? Is it more like this? And she just listened so well and took such detailed notes. I was blown away. Now, I'm a detailed person. You haven't caught on to that yet, but this was blowing my mind. And the physician that I saw when he came in, I had talked about my eyes drooping, and I said something about ptosis, and he smiled and he started to chuckle a little bit, and he's like, I think you mean ptosis. And we both kind of just laughed because it was a great moment. So when physicians are willing to laugh with you in those moments, I think it's just a great thing. I had another one that flew into my brain. It flew right out. There's so many great ones. Yeah, so like while I'm trying to think of that, if you have any great experiences that you have had as a patient with providers, then please put those in the comments below. I want this to be like a massive encouragement thing for healthcare providers where they can just see like what they're doing right, because I think so often they hear criticism and critiques and about what's going wrong in the healthcare industry, and I think it could really make their day. And so if you want to put those comments below, that would be fantastic. And I'm still trying to think of what it was I was going to say. I don't know if it's going to come back to me. Maybe I'll make a part 2 if I think of it. But I hope that this has encouraged you and inspired you to think of those moments. I know that some providers love to get cards, and I highly recommend if you can acknowledge and appreciate your providers, that can go a long way with them. And share your experiences below. And thanks for listening. If you're a healthcare provider, thank you for what you do. Your job is not easy, and you have so many other things that vie for your attention and other responsibilities that need your attention. And thank you for what you do. You make a difference in our lives, and thank you. And I will see you guys in another video. Bye. You guys, I forgot one of the ones that was like top of mind for me, and I feel like I have to share it, and because it's great. So there is a physician, and I think I've mentioned this in other videos about my functional neurological disorder diagnosis and how I wasn't sure that I agreed with it. And anyways, the doctor that I saw, I recently sent him my genetic test results that included the COL6A3 and WASH-C5 variants of unknown significance, just to get his opinion and to see if that would, if it would be an appropriate route for me to go to the MDA clinic at that point, since Bethlem myopathy is a type of muscular dystrophy. Even though it's a VUS, I just wanted to get his take on it. And I honestly just want to be a part of, helping to figure these things out for future patients. And to help researchers, get to the bottom of things. But anyways, this physician has been phenomenal, and he's a younger guy, and during that appointment where I was diagnosed with functional neurological disorder, I think I was hitting, there were multiple things happening, right? So I had gone into the appointment to kind of find out what his take was on periodic paralysis, and if I might have it, then to get the referral to the MDA clinic to explore that. And in the process, he was describing functional neurological disorder to me, and I felt like we were kind of not on the same page, but I didn't really know how to express that, and I was trying to, but it was a very long appointment. And to his credit, he gave me an hour and a half, and that is just unheard of for patients to have a consultation that is an hour and a half long. That is very difficult to get that much time with a physician. And even in that amount of time, we still weren't able to cover the full context of my symptoms. And I think that's partly why the experience was the way that it was. But apart from that, I just wanted to credit him with giving that much time. And then not only that, so it was hitting lunchtime, and I cannot, if I go too long without food, it is not good. I do the whole mini meals thing, but I get when it's really bad, I get weepy and just all kinds of bad happen. And I think I was starting to get hungry. I think I was starting to have low blood sugar, and then I had all this information coming at me, and then I felt like we weren't at the same page, and I just broke down and was bawling. And I was trying to piece together the information that he was providing me with the information that I had been provided about periodic paralysis, and I didn't understand how the periodic paralysis was being like ruled out, and I didn't feel like it was, and so I was trying to like communicate, but it was not going well. I was very weepy. But the amazing thing that he did that I loved was that he provided this space, and he like being as a guy and a guy and a girl, like I think that like a lot of guys feel really uncomfortable when girls cry, and he gave me the space to be upset, and he just like acknowledged, and he was like, it's okay, and he's like, you know, you're allowed to feel these feelings, and like he even gave me a tissue box and was like, this is on the house, like don't worry. And I couldn't really fully explain in that moment what was happening for me, which I think that caused confusion, but I was just blown away by how he managed that whole situation and allowed me to have my feelings in that moment. And so I was really grateful for that. And beyond that, like he allowed me to reapproach him afterwards when I was able to gather myself, and I was like, hey, you know, I know that we looked into this, but we haven't done this testing for periodic paralysis, and I think, you know, from what I've heard from the experts, this can be really diagnostic. And so he went ahead and ordered it for me, and I thought that was great. Like he took the time to even follow up in another appointment with me to get me that the order for that testing, which was fantastic. And ever since then, like I have, you know, I followed up with him to say, you know, I think this is where I get hung up with the FND diagnosis. And I think I could have FND maybe, but I think it could be in addition to something else. And these are the resources that are helping me. And he actually encouraged me that if I found resources that were helpful about FND, because they can be really hard to come by, to let him know. And he had provided, you know, some resources when I was first diagnosed as well. But I thought like his openness to hearing that was just great. And on top of that, once I sent the genetic information, he wrote back to me like the next day and was like, you know, I saw your message, and I went and I looked up the genetic things, and there's not very much information, and it's really hard to tell because we're so like new into this whole genetic testing thing. We're getting all of these variants of unknown significance, and we just don't know, which I totally get. If you start to venture into the world of genetics, I start to feel like a tiny grain of salt in a sea of salt. It gets crazy. But he was willing, he was providing next steps to me even through my patient portal. He was like, I think these are the possible next steps we could take. And I had told him, you know, I'm interested in this for personal symptom management, family planning, and I want to be a part of drawing awareness to these things, and also like helping physicians and researchers and patients find answers for the future. And I just didn't know, you know, what options were available. And he said, you know, I think we could go back to the genetic testing if you wanted to, and see about the family testing and counseling from there, or we could also go to the genomics department at our hospital and go from there. And so I just was blown away by his support, so supportive, and I wanted to comment on that. And another thing I thought about was doctors asking this question, what other questions do you have? Not, do you have other questions, but that just like that tiny difference of what other questions do you have? That I think has done so much to help me feel like I'm not a burden. I think as patients, it can feel like we're a burden on other people, and especially like we have a lot of us are aware that doctors are short on time. And so if you're asking us what other questions you have, like, to me, that's like, you're not rushing me out the door. You care about the questions that I do have. You know that I'm going to have questions and expect them. And I just really love it when doctors ask that question. So I didn't want to leave those out of the encouragement. So anyways, leave your comments in the comments below about great experiences that you've had, and I look forward to reading those. And if you're a healthcare provider, like, tell me what you think. Like, was this inspiring for you? How are you experiencing these kind of videos? But anyways, I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Okay, I have 2 more that I forgot. And I cannot, they've just been phenomenal, so I don't want to leave them out. First one I'll talk about, my geneticist is fantastic, and he is the one that diagnosed me with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I get to meet with him this week, actually, so I'm excited to get to pick his brain and to get his thoughts. He's just so knowledgeable, and he specializes in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. If you want a recommendation of who to go to, if you think you might have Ehlers-Danlos and you're looking for someone, he is a private physician, so he's not covered by insurance. They can do the whole super bill thing, but if you're looking for someone and you're interested, just message me and I can get that information to you. But he's so knowledgeable of EDS, and my first appointment was, actually all of my appointments with him have been through telehealth, and that's one of the things that I love about his office, is that they offer telehealth. And I was concerned because, Ehlers-Danlos kind of has like physical things it's helpful to be in person about, but I was just able to use like the computer to like show, like, bending over that I could touch my feet or almost touch my feet, and like the hypermobility part of it, we were able to do all of that over the telehealth, which was surprising and kind of cool. But anyways, he has been fantastic. And when I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, he made sure that we did the genetic testing for like the other types of Ehlers-Danlos, just to make sure that it wasn't like vascular EDS, which can have a lot of scary ramifications that come along with that one. But and others, like other types of EDS, kind of have different implications about the treatment that you might need depending on like what's affected. So I felt really confident with the care plan that he was offering, because he was willing to look into those as well. And after the diagnosis, he literally provided a 200-page like PDF of like research and support materials and like helpful like stretches and exercises that you can do with Ehlers-Danlos. And like, as a person that does like the research, like constantly looking for medical journal articles on different topics, like that was amazing to me. And it took a really long time to download, but I thought that was so awesome. And he was willing to provide referrals to other specialists, to like physical therapy specialists who know EDS and are familiar enough to treat people with that condition. And he also said to treat him as a subject matter expert in Ehlers-Danlos, and said that if I ever had any questions, to follow up with him in his email and he could get back to me. And if I had like questions about something, whether like to get his opinion on something that might be like that I was unsure about, then he was willing to provide, his thoughts on it. And I thought that was really amazing. I felt like I haven't often seen that. Like I have seen it from some doctors, but not all. And I know that doctors are so pressed for their time. And so that was really encouraging to me and helpful. And then I cannot go without talking about my current primary care physician, because she is phenomenal. I think she has from what I read about her bio, like I was researching primary care physicians like crazy before I came across hers, and she has a boatload of experience with kind of like, I think she worked at like a research hospital before, but she has been so, like I said, for one of the other providers that I said, like so slow to draw conclusions and willing to help me look into things. Like when I started talking to her about periodic paralysis, I brought materials with me, and there was a point where I wanted to see if the potassium meter that I had purchased, to see if I could recognize any patterns in my potassium levels when I was having symptoms. And I wanted to make sure that this thing was actually providing accurate test results. And so I went to her and I explained it. I showed her like the periodic paralysis like chart of like how to read the meter, and the Periodic Paralysis like Association and the Periodic Paralysis International, like their documents to help physicians and patients understand what periodic paralysis is. And she was so willing. She's a great listener, and I always feel like she has my best interest in mind. Like when she is concerned about something, like there was a time where she was concerned about like my blood work. I had like a transient infection. I still don't really know what happened, but it had triggered my muscle weakness. And then it was like I think my white count was high, and like it was showing that I was dehydrated, but I was staying well hydrated. I think I wasn't having enough salt was part of the issue. But because of certain numbers, she was really concerned, and she sent me back to my hematologist. I got a hematologist when I had blood clots. And so it scared the crap out of me, but I was so grateful that she had those concerns in the first place and was willing to send me where I needed to go and to investigate that. And when I told her that, like when I came with the potassium meter and I was like, hey, like I want to see if I can test like my blood serum level potassium next to this to see if it's really being accurate. And she's like, oh, kind of like blood glucose meters. And she was like, sure, I'm happy to do that. Like anytime like you want to see if it's, out of calibration or whatever, she said, you can always come and we can do this again. And I thought that was amazing. So, thank you to all these physicians. And I think I hit them all now. And, yeah, thanks guys for listening and for putting up with all of these afterwards ones. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.